Undercover black CEO walks into his store, finds the janitor crying, and the truth is worse. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. Picture this. A bustling retail store, its fluorescent lights humming above rows of neatly arranged shelves, each filled with the latest gadgets and designer apparel. The air smells faintly of freshly polished wood floors and new merchandise. In the midst of all this, an unlikely figure steps inside. It's a regular day, or so it seems. But the man who walks through that door is no ordinary customer. He is the CEO of this very company, a billionaire in his own right. Yet, he's here undercover, wearing nothing but a simple jacket and a cap, blending into the crowd as he observes his store and its employees. His mission is clear. He's here to see things as they really are, to get an unfiltered look at what's happening on the ground. But what he finds is not what he expected. As he moves through the aisles, his eyes are drawn to the janitor, a middle-aged man, hunched over in the corner of the store, quietly wiping the floor. The janitor's face is streaked with tears, his shoulders trembling as he tries to maintain his composure. At first, the CEO thinks it's just a moment of personal distress, but as he watches, he realizes that there's more to it than that. The janitor is quietly sobbing, his head bowed as he works, unable to hold back the tears any longer. The CEO is shocked. In a place where high-end fashion and cutting-edge technology are the center of attention, where luxury and opulence reign, this man is being overlooked, forgotten, ignored. No one seems to care. But that's not the worst of it. As the CEO steps closer, he overhears a conversation between two employees near the front of the store. One of them casually mentions the janitor's past, how he's been struggling for months with unpaid medical bills, how his wife is sick, and how he's been working double shifts just to make ends meet. But instead of offering help, the employees dismiss him, talking about him as if he's invisible, as if he doesn't matter. The CEO feels a rush of anger, his heart heavy with the weight of what he's hearing. How could this be happening in his store? How could a hard-working man like the janitor be treated this way? The truth is worse than he could have imagined. The CEO has built an empire, but in his quest for success, he's failed to see the people who are the backbone of his company, the ones who keep it running behind the scenes. And as he stands there, watching the janitor struggle, a realization dawns on him. It's time to make a change. But what will he do about it? And what will happen when the janitor finds out who the CEO really is? Stay tuned for the next part of this story, because the truth is about to hit harder than anyone could have expected. As the CEO stands there, watching the janitor struggle with tears falling silently, a sense of shame begins to wash over him. He had been so caught up in building his empire that he had never stopped to see the people who made it all possible. All these years, he had looked at the numbers, the revenue, the projections, but he had completely ignored the human side of his business. This man, the janitor, was a cog in his machine, but he was more than that. He was a person, a father, a husband, fighting battles that no one in this store seemed to care about. The CEO takes a step forward, still hidden beneath the guise of a regular customer, unsure of what to do. But something inside him urges him to act. He approaches the janitor slowly, his footsteps almost silent on the polished floor. The janitor doesn't notice him at first, too focused on his task of cleaning, trying to hold back his sobs. Finally, the CEO speaks, his voice gentle but firm. "Are you okay?" The janitor looks up in surprise, his eyes wide with shock. He stares at the man standing before him, not knowing who he is or why he even cares. For a moment, there's a flicker of hope in the janitor's eyes, but he quickly looks away, embarrassed. "I'm fine, sir. Just a bad day," he mutters, wiping his face with the back of his hand. The CEO watches him carefully, trying to figure out the right words. But he can't ignore the truth any longer. This is his store, his employees, his responsibility. The janitor, who has been working here for years, was barely making ends meet. The CEO has heard rumors about his struggles, but he had never really listened. He had never taken the time to learn the stories of his employees, to understand their hardships. The janitor looks up again, this time meeting the CEO's gaze. "I didn't mean to make a scene," he says, his voice cracking. "It's just, things have been tough lately." The CEO can feel the weight of the janitor's words. He knows this man, like so many others in his company, has been overlooked. He's been doing everything to survive, working long hours, putting up with disrespect, trying to make ends meet, and no one ever saw it. The CEO feels a deep pang of guilt. He realizes that he's failed these people, the ones who help run his business day in and day out. For the first time, he sees them not as workers, but as human beings. He feels the need to change, to make things right. But what can he do? He takes a deep breath, then asks, "Is there anything I can do to help?" The janitor hesitates. His pride holds him back, but the desperation in his eyes says it all. "I don't know," he whispers. I just need to keep working. I have a family to take care of. My wife's sick, and I can't afford her treatment. I'm behind on bills, and I'm not sure how much longer I can keep going." The CEO stands there, silent, taking it all in. This is the truth, raw and painful. The janitor's struggles are far more than what anyone could have imagined. And the CEO is left to grapple with the weight of this truth. He can't simply walk away. This moment will change everything. As the CEO stands there, looking at the man who has been invisible to him for so long, he makes a decision. It's time to change the way he runs his company. He needs to make sure that no one else is left behind, that no one is ignored or undervalued again. And this is just the beginning. The CEO knows the road ahead will be tough, but he's ready to face it head on. He just hopes it's not too late to make things right. The janitor watches the CEO closely, unsure of what to expect. And as the CEO looks back at him, he makes a promise that will forever change the trajectory of his company, and perhaps even his own life. The CEO's mind is racing as he walks away from the janitor, the weight of what he has just learned hanging heavily on his shoulders. He had always been focused on the big picture, the profits, the board meetings, the quarterly reports. But now, as he reflects on his conversation with the janitor, everything feels so different. His eyes were opened, but now what? The janitor's words echo in his head. The struggles, the sacrifices, the feeling of being invisible. How could he have missed all of this for so long? He can't shake the feeling that he's failed his employees, and in some ways, he's failed himself too. The realization hits him hard. He's been too disconnected from the very people who have helped him build his empire. His store, his business, his success. It's all because of people like the janitor, working tirelessly behind the scenes, and yet, they're treated like they don't matter. He had to do something about it. As he makes his way to his office, his phone buzzes. He picks it up, distracted, still deep in thought. It's a message from his assistant reminding him of a critical meeting later that afternoon. He stares at the message for a moment, then sets the phone down without responding. Today's meeting suddenly feels irrelevant. The CEO can't focus on numbers and projections right now. He needs to focus on something more important, his employees. That evening, he stays late at the office, pacing back and forth. He drafts emails, makes calls, and begins planning how to address the issue he now sees so clearly. The janitor, whose name he still doesn't know, is just one of many who have been left behind by the corporate machine. How many more employees are struggling in silence? How many have stories just like his? The CEO knows he can't fix everything in one day, but he has to start somewhere. He makes a call to his HR department, telling them to set up a meeting for the next day. He needs to start an initiative to ensure that all employees, no matter their position, are treated with respect and dignity. He needs to make sure that everyone, from the janitors to the executives, is heard and valued. The next morning, the CEO arrives early at the store. He doesn't go in through the front like he did the day before. Instead, he walks around to the back entrance and enters the building through the employee entrance. It's a small but significant gesture. He wants to understand what it's like for his employees, to see things from their perspective. He walks through the store, stopping to speak to a few employees along the way. Some are surprised to see him, others are a bit wary. They don't know who he is, but he takes the time to talk to them, to ask how they're doing, to listen to their concerns. No one seems to recognize him as the CEO, and he likes it that way. For the first time in a long while, he feels like he's getting a real sense of the store's culture. It's not all bad, but it's clear that something is missing. There's a lack of trust, a sense of resignation in the air. The employees are doing their jobs, but they're not truly engaged. They don't feel valued. As he walks through the store, he spots the janitor again. This time, he approaches him directly. "Hey, I wanted to apologize," the CEO says, his voice sincere. The janitor looks up, surprised. "For what, sir?" "For not seeing you," the CEO replies. "For not recognizing what you and so many others are going through. I promise, I won't make that mistake again." The janitor stands there, stunned, unsure of how to respond. "It's okay, sir," he says after a moment. "It's just how things are. People like me don't get noticed." "It's fine." The CEO shakes his head. "No, it's not fine. And it's going to change. I'm going to make sure of it." The janitor looks at him, a flicker of hope in his eyes. The CEO's words are more than just promises. They're a turning point. It's a moment where the CEO decides that the future of his company will not be built on profits alone, but on the people who make it all happen. And this is just the beginning of a long journey. The CEO knows that this is going to be a hard road, but he's ready to walk it. He's ready to make the changes that are needed, not just for the business, but for the people who work for it. The journey won't be easy, but he's determined to make sure that no one in his company feels invisible again. As he leaves the store that day, he knows he's taking the first step toward building a company that values its people just as much as it values profits. And that, in the end, will be the true measure of success. The days that followed were filled with change, but also uncertainty. The CEO's decision to address the issues within his company was met with a mix of surprise and skepticism. For years, the employees had been used to being overlooked, their voices ignored, their struggles brushed aside in the name of profit. Now, suddenly, the man at the top was speaking out. He was promising things would be different, but could anyone really believe it? Could the janitor, who had spent years quietly suffering, really trust that this was more than just words? As the CEO walked through the store once again, he could sense the change. It wasn't huge, but there was a shift in the air. Employees were starting to notice him. They weren't sure why he was still there, or what he was up to, but they couldn't ignore the fact that he was taking the time to speak to them, to understand them. It wasn't just the janitor anymore. Every person in the store mattered. Every person had a story, and every person deserved to be seen. The janitor, whose name the CEO had learned was Henry, approached him again. This time, there was no surprise in his eyes, only a quiet gratitude. "Thank you for what you said the other day," Henry said. "It means a lot." The CEO nodded. "You deserve to be heard, Henry. I'm sorry it took me this long to realize that." Henry's eyes softened. "It's all right, sir. Most people don't see us. They don't care. But I know it's not easy to change things. It's just hard sometimes, you know." The CEO looked at him thoughtfully. "I understand. And I'm not going to let things stay the way they were. I can't. But change takes time. I know that." Henry smiled faintly. "Tanya, but it's a start, right? That's all we can ask for." As the CEO walked through the store, he knew Henry was right. Change wasn't going to happen overnight. But it had to start somewhere, and this was as good a place as any. The CEO was determined to make sure that every employee had a voice. He started holding regular meetings with his managers, making sure that they understood the importance of listening to their teams, of valuing their work. He implemented new policies to ensure that everyone, no matter their position, would be treated with dignity and respect. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Over the next few weeks, the CEO continued to make changes, some big, some small. He started a mentorship program for employees, offering opportunities for growth within the company. He provided financial assistance to those in need, making sure that no one had to go without basic necessities because of their paycheck. The janitors, the cashiers, the stockroom workers, all of them began to feel more seen, more valued. But not everyone was happy with the changes. Some of the upper management grumbled, questioning why they should be forced to listen to employees who were just workers. The CEO heard their complaints, but he refused to back down. He knew that in order to truly lead, he had to do the right thing, not the easy thing. And the right thing was treating everyone, no matter their role, with respect. One afternoon, a few weeks into the changes, the CEO received an unexpected phone call. It was Henry, the janitor. "Sir, I just wanted to let you know that I got an offer. They're offering me a position, full-time work, benefits, and everything. It's a huge step up from where I was." The CEO felt a surge of pride. "That's amazing, Henry. You deserve it. I'm glad to hear it." Henry hesitated before speaking again. "It's not just that, sir. It's more than just the job. It's that someone saw me. Someone actually cared. The CEO was quiet for a moment, taking in Henry's words. This wasn't just about a job. It was about the change he had started, about the culture he was building. He had given Henry the opportunity to succeed, but more importantly, he had given him the dignity he had been denied for so long. The CEO knew that this was just the beginning. There was still so much work to be done, but seeing Henry take that step forward, seeing the pride in his voice, reminded him of why he had started this journey. He wasn't just changing his company. He was changing lives. As he hung up the phone, the CEO smiled to himself. For the first time in a long while, he felt like he was truly leading, not just by numbers, but by the values that mattered most. And as he stood in his office, looking out at the city below, he knew he had made the right choice. The road ahead would be challenging, but it would be worth it. Because now, more than ever, he understood that success wasn't just about profits. It was about people. As the weeks passed, the changes in the company started to take root, but it wasn't always smooth sailing. The CEO had promised that things would be different, but making a shift in company culture wasn't as easy as signing a few new policies. Some employees embraced the new initiatives, excited by the prospects of growth and opportunity. Others were skeptical, questioning whether the CEO's promises would last or if this was just another fleeting phase. One of the first major tests came when the CEO walked into the store one morning and saw a familiar face at the front counter. It was Sarah, one of the sales associates who had been with the company for several years. Sarah was one of the first people to greet the CEO when he came in Undercover weeks ago. She had always been polite, but the tension was palpable between them. As the CEO approached, Sarah looked up, her eyes betraying a hint of discomfort. "Good morning, sir," she said, a smile barely covering the unease in her voice. The CEO could tell that Sarah, like many others, still wasn't sure if these changes were real or just a show. "How are things going, Sarah?" he asked, his tone genuine. "Better," she replied, but there was a hesitation in her response. "I mean, we're trying. But change is hard, you know." The CEO nodded. "I understand. Change is never easy. But it's necessary. I'm here to make sure that everyone in this company feels heard and valued. You've been here for a long time, Sarah. You've seen how things have been. How do you feel about the changes so far?" Sarah paused, her gaze shifting from the CEO to the floor. "I think it's a step in the right direction," she said finally, her voice soft. "But I still wonder if it's enough. I mean, we're still expected to meet these targets, and we're still understaffed sometimes. It's like the changes are good, but it's not always enough to keep up with everything else." The CEO listened intently, taking in Sarah's words. He had expected some resistance, but he didn't realize just how deeply ingrained the old ways were. "I understand your concerns," he said. "And you're right. Meeting targets is important. But so is making sure that you have the support you need to succeed. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure you have the resources you need to do your job without feeling overburdened." Sarah looked up, her eyes searching his face. "You really mean that?" she asked. The CEO nodded. "Absolutely. I've learned a lot in the past few weeks, and I'm not going to let the company slip back into its old ways. We're in this together." The moment felt significant. It wasn't just a conversation between a CEO and an employee. It was a turning point, a sign that the CEO's promise wasn't just empty words. But it wasn't just Sarah who was still unsure. The upper management, who had grown used to a certain way of doing things, still had reservations. They were hesitant to embrace the changes, worried about how it might affect their bottom line. Some argued that focusing too much on employee welfare would impact productivity, that financial results would suffer if the company wasn't more aggressive. One afternoon, the CEO called a meeting with his top executives. The room was filled with tension as they all sat around a large conference table. The CEO, calm and composed, started the meeting with a simple statement. "I know some of you are concerned about the direction we're taking. I know that it's not easy to change the way we've been doing things for years. But I need you to understand something very clearly. This is not just about profits. This is about people." There was a pause in the room. The executives exchanged glances, uncertain of how to respond. The CEO continued. "Our employees are the backbone of this company. Without them, none of this." He waved his hand to encompass the building around them, the business they had built. "None of this would exist. It's time to treat them like the valuable assets they are. That means listening to them, supporting them, and giving them the tools to succeed. One of the executives, Mark, a senior vice president, leaned forward. I get what you're saying, but we also have to look at the numbers. If we don't meet our targets, we won't be able to pay these new benefits. We need to be careful about what we promise. The CEO nodded. I hear you. But I believe that if we invest in our people, the results will follow. It may take time, but I'm confident it will pay off. We're not just looking at short-term gains. We're building a company that values its people, and in turn, they'll be motivated to give their best. The room was quiet for a moment, and then Mark sighed. All right, I get it. But it's going to take a lot of work to change the way we operate. The CEO smiled. And I'm ready to put in that work. Together, we can make it happen. But we have to be willing to change. Over the next few weeks, the CEO continued to push for the changes he had promised. He introduced new training programs, offered mental health resources, and began restructuring the company to ensure that everyone, from the janitors to the executives, had a voice. It wasn't easy, and there were setbacks, but the momentum was building. The CEO could feel it, and more importantly, his employees could feel it too. As the changes took shape, there was a noticeable difference in the atmosphere of the store. People started talking more openly, collaborating more, and taking pride in their work. The CEO could see the shift, and it filled him with a sense of purpose. He knew that he still had a long way to go, but this was a start. And it was more than just a company that was changing. It was a culture. A culture where people were seen, heard, and respected. And that was just the beginning. The CEO stood in the middle of the store, watching as his employees moved about their daily tasks. There was a new energy in the air, a sense of purpose that hadn't been there before. It wasn't perfect yet, but it was progress. He could see it in the way people interacted with each other, in the pride they took in their work. The change was real, but he knew it wouldn't be easy to keep up this momentum. Over the past few months, he had made changes, big and small. But now, as the CEO, he had to ensure those changes would last. He couldn't let things slip back to the way they were before. The employees had started to trust him, and he couldn't afford to let them down. As he walked down the aisles, a feeling of determination filled him. He stopped by the stockroom, where one of the new hires, Elena, was organizing inventory. She looked up, surprised to see him. Hey, sir, she said, a little hesitant. Everything going well? He asked, genuinely curious. Elena smiled, though there was a bit of nervousness in her expression. Yeah, things are good. A little overwhelming, but we're managing. I think things are starting to feel better, you know? The CEO nodded, his eyes softening. I'm glad to hear that. I know it's not always easy, but I want you to know that I'm here to support you and everyone else. If there's ever anything you need, don't hesitate to let me know. Elena looked at him for a moment, then nodded. I will. Thank you. It's been nice, having someone actually listen. It feels like things matter now. The CEO felt a sense of pride well up in him. It wasn't just about the store anymore. It was about the culture he was building, a culture where people didn't feel invisible. It was working, but there was still a long road ahead. The next challenge came when the upper management decided to hold a company-wide meeting. This time, the CEO didn't want to just talk about what had changed. He wanted to make sure everyone was fully on board with the new direction. The room was full of executives, some of whom still had reservations about the changes. The CEO could feel their eyes on him as he took his place at the front of the room. He knew this meeting would be pivotal. I know that the past few months have been a challenge, he began, his voice calm but firm. But I want to make something clear. We are not going back to the old way of doing things. We can't. A few of the executives exchanged glances, and the CEO could feel the tension building. I've heard your concerns, and I understand that change is hard, he continued. But the truth is, this company's success is not just about the numbers. It's about the people behind the numbers. It's about the people who work here every day. And if we don't take care of them, if we don't invest in them, we'll lose more than just profits. We'll lose the heart of this company. The room was silent, and the CEO could see the faces of the executives soften. For the first time, they seemed to understand. They had always been focused on the bottom line, on growing the company, but they had failed to realize that the employees were the ones who made that growth possible. I'm asking all of you to help me lead this company into a new era, the CEO said, his voice steady. We need to listen to our employees, support them, and treat them with the respect they deserve. Together, we can build something better, something that lasts. There was a long pause in the room, And then Mark, the senior vice president, spoke up. "You're right," he said, his voice low. "I didn't see it before, but now I get it. If we don't change, we'll lose what makes this company special." The CEO smiled, feeling a sense of relief. It wasn't going to be easy, but it was a step in the right direction. The meeting ended with a renewed sense of purpose. As the CEO walked out of the room, he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in what he had accomplished. It wasn't just about the changes he had made. It was about the way he had inspired others to see things differently. And that was just the beginning. The real work had only just begun. The next day, as the CEO walked into the store again, he was greeted by a different atmosphere. The employees were more engaged, more motivated. They were smiling, chatting with each other, taking pride in their work. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. And that, to the CEO, was everything. The journey was far from over, but he was determined to continue leading with integrity, with a commitment to making sure that everyone in his company, from the janitor to the CEO, felt valued. This wasn't just about profits. It was about creating a company where people mattered, where their contributions were recognized and appreciated. And in that moment, the CEO knew that he had truly made a difference. The CEO walked through the store once again, this time with a feeling of quiet pride. He had worked hard to foster change, and as he passed by his employees, he could feel the shift in the air. It wasn't just about the policies anymore. It was the culture that had begun to evolve. The energy was different. There was a sense of unity, a sense that everyone, no matter their position, was now a vital part of the company. But just as he was starting to feel that the storm had passed, a new challenge reared its head. In the past, he had made promises of better treatment, of opportunities for growth, and of ensuring that no one was left behind. But now, the question was, how do you hold people accountable in a culture of respect and fairness? One afternoon, the CEO received a phone call from his head of HR, Karen. "We need to talk," she said, her voice tense. "There's something going on that you need to know about." The CEO's heart sank. He knew that things couldn't stay perfect forever. "What's happening?" he asked. "It's about one of the managers, Lucas," Karen replied. "We've had multiple complaints. He's been undermining the new policies, belittling some of the lower-level employees, and generally going against what we've been working to build." The CEO paused, trying to process what he was hearing. He had hoped the changes would take hold across the board, but this was the test. Could he lead with integrity, even when it meant confronting his own team? "I need to speak with him," the CEO said, his voice firm. Later that day, the CEO called Lucas into his office. Lucas entered, confident, as always, with a slight smirk on his face. The CEO gestured for him to sit, his posture relaxed but his mind focused. "I've been hearing some concerning things, Lucas," the CEO began. "I understand you're struggling with some of the changes we've implemented, but I need to be clear. This is a company that values respect and equality for everyone. No one is above that." Lucas looked at him, his arrogance still evident. "I'm not the one causing problems here," he said. "These new policies are a joke. They're slowing us down, making everything more complicated. You can't expect me to follow orders that don't make sense." The CEO took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "Lucas, what you're saying is that you don't think these changes matter. But let me remind you, these changes are about building a workplace where people feel valued, where we treat each other with respect. That's the foundation of any successful company. And if you can't support that, then you're not the kind of leader we need here." There was a long silence. Lucas shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his earlier confidence faltering. "You're asking me to ignore what's best for the company," he muttered. "I'm asking you to understand what's best for the people who work here," the CEO replied. "If we don't treat our employees with respect, if we don't listen to them, we're not going to get their best work. You're not just managing numbers, Lucas. You're managing people." Lucas looked down, his arms crossed over his chest. "So what now?" "Now," the CEO said, his voice steady, "we make a decision. You either buy into this culture of respect and collaboration, or we part ways. Because I can't lead a company that doesn't treat people right, and I can't have managers who undermine the work we're trying to do." For a moment, Lucas said nothing. Then he stood up, the tension thick in the air. "I see. Well, I guess I'll have to think about it." The CEO stood as well, his expression resolute. "Take all the time you need, Lucas. But know this company is about people. It's always been about people. And if you can't see that, Maybe it's time for you to move on. As Lucas left the office, the CEO sat down, his mind racing. This was the hardest part of leadership. It wasn't about making big decisions or pushing for growth. It was about maintaining integrity, even when it meant losing a team member who had once been seen as valuable. The CEO knew the road ahead would be difficult, but he also knew that he couldn't compromise on his values. The next morning, Lucas handed in his resignation. It was a difficult moment for the CEO, but it also marked a turning point for the company. The CEO knew that the decisions he was making now would shape the future of the business. The changes were never going to be easy, but they were necessary. As the CEO looked around the office, he realized that this was a company built on values, built on respect, built on a commitment to making things right. And as long as he stood firm in those values, the company would continue to thrive. After Lucas's resignation, a heavy silence hung in the air. The CEO knew that the path to change was never going to be easy, but losing a manager was a tough pill to swallow. Still, he stood firm. He wasn't willing to compromise on the values he had fought so hard to instill. The company needed leaders who believed in the new direction, not ones who resisted it. The days following Lucas's departure were filled with reflection. The CEO realized that although one person had left, it didn't diminish the progress they had made. If anything, it solidified his commitment to the changes he had promised. With each step forward, he could see more of his employees stepping up, embracing the new culture. Sarah, who had been one of the first to voice her concerns, approached him one morning with a newfound sense of confidence. "Hey, sir," she said, walking toward him. "I just wanted to thank you for sticking with it. I've noticed a real difference around here. It's not perfect, but I can feel the shift." The CEO smiled, grateful for her words. "Thank you, Sarah. I know it's been a tough road, but we're getting there." "It's not just the policies," Sarah continued. "It's the way you've made us feel seen. It's the little things, like actually listening to us. We've never had that before. You've made me realize that I have a voice here." Hearing that made the CEO's heart swell. He had hoped that the changes would lead to a better environment, but hearing it directly from Sarah confirmed that they were on the right track. "I'm glad to hear that," he said. "Your voice matters, just like everyone else's." As the weeks went by, the changes continued to take shape. The company was beginning to transform, not just in its policies, but in the way people interacted with one another. The sense of division that had once permeated the workplace was slowly being replaced by a feeling of unity. Employees were more engaged, more willing to share their ideas and concerns. The janitor, Henry, who had once been ignored, was now regularly greeted by name, and his contributions were acknowledged. The shift was subtle, but undeniable. Yet, even as the CEO watched his vision come to life, he knew that the real work was just beginning. Change wasn't just about creating new rules or hiring the right people. It was about sustaining that change, making sure it wasn't just a passing trend. To do that, he needed to lead by example, constantly reinforcing the values of respect and collaboration. One afternoon, the CEO walked into a meeting with the senior leadership team. It was time to assess how far they had come and what still needed to be done. As the team sat around the table, he could sense the anticipation. They all knew that this was a pivotal moment. "We've made progress," the CEO began, "but we're not done yet. This is about more than just the numbers, it's about our culture. We've built a foundation of respect, but now we need to make sure it's embedded in everything we do." Mark, the senior vice president, who had once been skeptical of the CEO's approach, raised his hand. "I've been thinking about what you said, and I agree. We need to keep pushing. We can't let this slip." The CEO nodded. "Exactly. It's about sustaining this momentum. We need to ensure that every level of the company is engaged and committed to these values." There was a collective sense of responsibility in the room. The executives understood the challenge. They knew that it wasn't going to be easy, but they were ready to face it together. Over the next few months, the CEO and his team implemented even more initiatives to reinforce the company's new direction. They introduced leadership training programs focused on emotional intelligence and conflict resolution. They created mentorship opportunities for employees at all levels, fostering an environment where everyone could grow. And, perhaps most importantly, they ensured that every voice, no matter how small, was heard. The company's transformation wasn't just visible in its policies or its leadership, it was embedded in the daily interactions between people. As the CEO stood in the store one afternoon, looking out at his employees, he could see the difference. The store, once just a place of business, now felt like a community. A community where people felt seen, heard, and respected. And it wasn't just the CEO who felt the shift, his employees did too. Sarah, now a team lead, walked up to him once again, her smile wide. "You did it," she said. "We did it." The CEO smiled back, his heart full. "We're just getting started." The road to change was long, and it was full of obstacles. But as the CEO looked around, he knew that they had created something real. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. And for the first time, he truly believed that the company was on a path to success, not just in profits, but in the way it treated its people. Months passed, and the change within the company continued to grow stronger. The CEO stood back one day, observing the store from a distance. It wasn't just the improvements in sales or the new policies that stood out, it was the energy. The transformation was no longer something that could be measured solely by numbers. It had become a part of the company's culture. Employees were smiling. They were engaging more with customers, and most importantly, they were working together like never before. It was a sight he hadn't expected to see so quickly, but it felt genuine. The respect they had for each other was palpable. The changes, though difficult at first, had now become the foundation of everything they did. Henry, the janitor, now walked through the store with his head held high. He had received a promotion and was now overseeing a small team of cleaners, a role he had never imagined for himself. But he wasn't just managing the floors anymore. He was managing his future. When the CEO saw him that morning, Henry smiled and gave him a simple nod of gratitude. "Thank you," Henry said quietly, "for giving me the chance to prove myself." The CEO returned the smile, his heart swelling with pride. "You earned it, Henry. You've shown what it means to be part of something bigger than yourself." There was a shift in how employees viewed their work. It wasn't just a job anymore. It was a place where they could build a future, a place where they could grow. The mentorship programs, the leadership training, and the open-door policy for concerns all contributed to creating an environment where everyone felt they had a voice. Even Sarah, once skeptical about the changes, had become one of the most vocal advocates for the new culture. She had started leading a team, and her ability to empathize with her colleagues made her an excellent manager. "It's not just about being heard anymore," she told the CEO one afternoon as they sat in the break room. "It's about being understood. You made us feel like we mattered." "That's what I always wanted," the CEO replied. "People shouldn't have to feel invisible in a place where they spend so much of their time. We've built this company together, and now we get to build it with respect." As the CEO stood there, listening to Sarah, he realized how far they had come. The change had been slow at first, and the skepticism had been overwhelming, but now, it felt like they were on the path to something more, something that could last. But even though things were going well, the CEO knew that leadership wasn't just about making decisions. It was about constantly adapting, about ensuring that the culture of respect and fairness remained at the core of the company. As he made his way to his office that afternoon, the CEO took a deep breath. He wasn't done yet. He never would be. But as he looked out over the bustling store floor, he knew they had created something special. The foundation was strong, and now it was time to build on it. In the weeks that followed, the CEO took even bolder steps. He expanded employee programs, encouraged open feedback, and ensured that their progress was recognized not just within the company, but in the community. The company had become known for its commitment to fairness and respect, drawing attention from potential hires and partners who valued these same principles. The employees were proud to be part of something they knew was different. And as the CEO watched his company thrive, he knew that the most important thing wasn't the profits. It was the people who made everything possible. He had set out to change the company, but in doing so, he had changed the lives of those around him. They had all grown together, and now they were stronger than ever. And as he thought about the journey ahead, he knew that the best was yet to come. The road was long, but it would always be worth it, because it wasn't just about leading a business. It was about leading people and building a future where they all could thrive. Discover the inspiring journey of a CEO's transformation as he learns the true value of his employees in this gripping Black story. From a business built on profit to a company that values its people, this story takes you through the challenges of building a workplace where everyone is seen and respected. Follow the CEO as he confronts difficult decisions, loses key managers, and watches his company shift into a thriving culture of fairness and opportunity. This Black story highlights the power of change, the importance of leadership, and the incredible impact of treating employees with dignity. Witness how a commitment to respect can turn a workplace around, making this one of the most powerful Black stories you'll hear. As the CEO learns from his mistakes, he works to make things right, creating a lasting legacy built on trust and respect. Tune in to hear how the story unfolds and the change that happens when respect for every person is at the core of leadership. This is not just another corporate tale, but a Black story that challenges traditional views of success and shows what's possible when we value human connections over profits.